Why is Fnatic versus G2 celebrated? Why on earth does the LEC always talk about G2 and Fnatic? How about you let an old guy tell those of you who don't know why these two organizations come up in conversation time and time again, especially around playoffs. Mind the wall, Ollie. Once upon a time, in 2009, League of Legends was released. It was a small beta with humble beginnings that began to pick up momentum in 2010, especially because that's when I started playing. This is the Season 1 World Championship and the old version of League. This game, this esport, this scene has evolved so much over the last decade that I cannot begin to cover everything. So I'm summarizing the main points for my talk today. It's crucial to know that Fnatic won the Season 1 World Championship and that European teams were favored to win the second. They did fall short, however. And in 2013, everything changed with the introduction of the EU LCS. Fnatic qualified to the EU LCS and went on to dominate. They had won 1 of 2 World Championships and then went on to win 5 of the first 6 seasons, only dropping a title to Alliance. Take a moment to appreciate that. Fnatic won 5 of the first 6 titles available in Europe. And this was against the likes of Gambit, the former Moscow 5, with Alexei Shetterhelm, Alliance with Froggen, Evil Geniuses, Rocket, Giants, even Fnatic Black, or as they were actually called, Origin. It did not matter who stood up to Fnatic. They all ultimately fell. Fnatic didn't falter on the international stage either. They showed up at MSI and Worlds, carrying that European flag high. Fnatic ruled Europe. They were our hopes abroad, and this right here, this was their kingdom. No one yet had been able to challenge Fnatic domestically, until a new challenger appears, and that challenger was extremely effective. In 2016, G2 Esports finally qualified into the EU LCS after shedding their former name, Gamers2, and replacing their mid laner Ocelot with the next generation of EU mid with Perks. It cannot be understated what a gigantic impact G2 had on Europe at the time. But to skip to the end, they would win back-to-back titles, being the first team ever to do so, and only now 1 win behind Fnatic in their debut 2 years. 2016 and 2017 was the year of G2, and it was all led by Perks. Perks dominated the mid lane. He introduced the lane kingdom. He never crumbled under the pressure. And look, I could make an entire intro like this just for Perks, but I don't want to undervalue what the rest of the team did. So for today, know this. G2 won 4 titles in a row, which Fnatic never did. They also pissed off an entire region with a vacation meme, and then became the bad boys of League who couldn't be beaten in EU. It looked as though G2 was set to take over Europe, to overtake Fnatic. But Fnatic had other plans. They refused to go down. Enter 2018. We begin our 11th season. Fnatic find a secret weapon in camps. This kid pops off. Fnatic wins spring and summer titles. The team shows up at MSI and Fnatic make the world finals. No biggie. G2 get humbled, but they don't get humiliated. This year they had lost Sven and Mithy, but they still look competitive. And interestingly, fan sentiment begins to turn in their favor. The competition and rivalry develops. This Fnatic, however, would not exist without the G2 of years prior. And the G2 of years prior wanted to be back on top. How would they do this? Well, it's pretty simple. They would take their opponent's biggest weapon. They would role swap their greatest. So Caps joins G2, Perks moves to the bottom lane, and G2 obliterate the living hell out of everything that stood in their way. The 2019 G2 Esports roster will go down in history as one of the most exciting, entertaining, and impressive teams ever. Thank you, Kevin. They won both splits in EU, once again dethroning Fnatic, but this time around, Fnatic and G2 were in form at the same time. They were competitive. The summer 2019 playoffs between G2 and Fnatic were the best series we have ever had. And also, by the way, that same year, G2 won MSI and also made World Finals. For those of you keeping score, 6 LEC titles for G2, 7 for Fnatic, 1 for Alliance. In the following year, G2 won both titles, and in 2021, Mad Lions was the 4th organization to win any title. They also managed to pick up both. To try put all of this together into a single digestible point, Without Fnatic's domination, G2 does not exist. Without G2's competition and their own era, Fnatic doesn't get to develop. And without both of these orgs, Europe simply isn't the same. These two teams have led the way for EU. They have been aspirational and inspirational. They have won 15 out of the 18 available titles. Fnatic have won a World Championship, G2 have won MSI, and both of these teams have made it to a World Championship final. I have barely scratched the surface of all the specific details for these teams, and every single one of you at home will have memories, thoughts, feelings about them, about the competition and the rivalry. But right now, one thing is clear. Right here, right now at this moment, Fnatic and G2 have defined the LEC for over a decade.
LEC and the newest chapter in the greatest rivalry of European League of Legends. Fnatic versus G2 Esports, and today both veterans as well as new faces will be leaving their mark on this duel, fighting for victory to face Rogue in the upper bracket next weekend. Just gonna let that breathe. They also have a pretty sick introduction, it seems, to the studio, arriving in their cars, and Janko's with the swag. Is anything else coming? Let's see. That was it. But that looked fine. That looks really, really nice. My name is Shox. I'm joined here at the desk starting off the day with Nymera and Treats. And I know we like to indulge here at the LEC, but let me for a second. Trevor, wow, that was fantastic. And we couldn't ask for a better way to set the stage today.
I was about to say, is the real rivalry G2 versus Fnatic, or is it Quickshot versus broadcast expectations? That was absurd.
I don't know. I'd also like to just shout out the Valorant rivalry that's going on right now. Fnatic versus G2 is happening over there and across esports. These two organizations have left a huge legacy, but let's focus it in on the European League of Legends scene. And I wanted to kick it off with this one, Treats, because it shows how they're never really as strong as each other, or almost never at the same point in time.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Throughout time, there's always been one team favored. I think, honestly, this season and this year is the closest they've ever been. And I think, in general, it will be a banger matchup. Fnatic versus G2 always delivers.
And I think, regardless of expectations, the really cool thing about this matchup is that it doesn't matter. There's always going to be top-tier entertainment.
Absolutely. So let's dive a little bit deeper into these two teams and set the stage about what they look like in 2022. Because both of them went through huge changes, right? The name remains the same, but the configuration is different. And starting with Fnatic, losing Reckless, losing Whippo, those are some huge changes.
They are, and those are the kind of players which give you an identity as a team. So for them to leave them and effectively move on to a different iteration of this roster and still have a really strong identity, that's no small achievement.
Yeah, I agree. I think it feels like the Fnatic organization just breeds success. And I mean, this roster is not different. I think that we have them as the favorites to win the entire LEC, right? And I think they just look stronger than ever, and Hylissang as well is just on top of his game.
We're going to be talking about Hylissang a lot this Ready Check, I'm sure about it, but he's been an integral part of the Fnatic identity for years and is now stepping up even more. When we look across to their opponents in terms of G2 Esports, this was the biggest organizational rebuild in G2's history coming into 2022, right? They are champion makers, but this time it was different. They took a bet. They took new, younger players on their roster.
And it was heavily debated. Now, of course, they were very confident in what they were doing. Not all public perception aligned with that. However, I think they've managed to prove a lot of those doubts kind of false and say, you know what, we're still here to compete. And as you were saying, they are competitive in this split.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the G2 of the last split really lacked identity. And I think that even with rookies, building up an identity can be hard. But I think that they have shown that their identity works on European soil, and I think that's really impressive.
I think for both teams, you see, scouting and making sure that they have the right pieces to fit the puzzle is something
Coherent rosters.
Coherent rosters is something that has continued, and it means that there's always these strongholds that are still on the team. And one player knowing both sides of the rivalry is G2's Caps, and he had some strong words coming into today's series.
I think a lot of fans are disappointed with me, especially after last year, but also not been too happy with my performance yet. I'm not either. I think more than anyone, I know that what I did last year was not good enough, and how my team did was not good enough. So I'm super happy with where we're at. Replacing a lot of the players I've played with for so many years, a lot of players who were big stars, who played super well throughout the years, with rookies and people who maybe haven't performed as well as the players before. But luckily, they showed up much bigger than I even could imagine. They bring a completely different set of energy. So it's an honor to play with them, honestly.
Looking for Wunder, might have to flash.
Knocking up Wunder, phase rush, the flash out, attack sweep, and first blood for Caps.
Ace in the hole's gonna hit Targamas, but he's able to survive. Perks now not in the best of shapes, he's gobbled up. Yanko's going in for the Q3, gets the knock up, and it's a double for Caps, and on both sides of the map.
Has bumped the
That's the Fury underneath the tower. How far your cannon barge doesn't really do much.
We've played quite a bit around Broken Blade on stage.
I think that Broken Blade is the best top lane in the league, so it kind of makes sense.
But the stage games are just such a small sample size of our overall game numbers, and people have to realize that we play 20 games a week and only 2 of them get shown on stage. In all these games we're playing around bot, we're playing around mid, we're playing around top, we're playing around everyone. We're trying a bunch of different drafts, but of course in BU1s we are gonna have something we have to rely on, right?
Razzle and Humanoid forced off to the top side. As much as Upset can get a single shut down. FLICKR gets 3 and G2 take the fight.
Caps, though, will not go down. The shield coming up just in time to stop the execution. But it does not matter because finally, Fnatic will look to find the win.
Fnatic's kind of keeping the same style of last year, of just going bot, and extra bot. We have to make sure to either make sure we win the bot matchup and then they will be completely lost. And we like to go top lane a lot, which means that junglers are going each side. And it kind of becomes a battle of who gets more done, but I'm confident that we'll be the ones.
Vitality will have to wait another day before they see if they can make playoffs. G2, the Devils on the Rift, claim top 4.
This year, we are going to prove everyone that we're back. I am back to take my trophy. I'm back to beat Humanoid. I'm back to beat Perks if needed. I will take them all down.
And the Caps on form is something everyone should be afraid of. And I think for all the times we talk about the new members on the rosters, it's the 2 core members in Jankos and Caps. They have so much pressure on their shoulders to make it all work. And you can't speak about a rivalry between Fnatic and G2 without speaking about the mid laners, right? Treats Humanoid and Caps kind of the new blood versus the older blood, even though he's already kind of new blood.
Yeah, I mean, mid lane in EU has kind of been a meme or a saying for a long time, and I think that it's clear that there's 2 mids like performing better than most of them, and they just win every title. So I think mid lane is OP, and both of these mids have shown it.
And I'm going to leave you just with this. The last time that a mid laner, but a team that didn't have Caps or Humanoid won a championship in Europe was 5 years ago, in 2017. I think that says something.
Yeah, and the person before that was just some guy called Perks. Not sure if you've heard of him. You have to have a great mid laner to do well in Europe.
Exactly so. So let's talk a little bit about how both of these mid laners work within the systems of their teams, maybe starting with Humanoid.
So I think Humanoid, his style has been just an absolute solid rock. His laning phase has been incredibly consistent, and he gives a control tower for his team to play around, because they know that Humanoid is always going to succeed regardless of what you do for him. You can go there and try and snowball him if you want, but he can spread that across the map if he wants as well. He gives you just a real amount of control across the map just by being in the game.
Yeah, I think that Caps, on the other hand, he's the Mr. Consistent, but also has this Joker-esque wildcard factor to him, and I think that he doesn't really look for these early lane stats. He doesn't really care about the stats. He wants his team to win, and he looks to roam around with Jankos a lot and get a lot done on the map.
He also said it in the video there, Alex, I'm actually not too happy about how I played so far, and I think we noticed that as well, right, in the regular season.
Well, I mean, you can see the difference between some of his pop-off games and some of the others. We saw his Silas game, we saw his Azir game at the very end of the split, saw a little bit of those shades of greatness which he used to have, and he's not quite quite there yet. Very scary if he does reach that, though, for the other teams in playoffs.
He did pop off in the last week, and that's what we're hoping to see here. If we dive a bit deeper into what exactly they provide for their teams, a kill map is always very handy, seeing where the kills appear that they make pre 14 minutes on the map. Starting with Humanoid, and I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, Treats, that he spends a lot of attention on the bot lane.
Yeah, I mean, Fnatic and bot lane, right? It's definitely the goal for them, and I think that Humanoid, and especially how Fnatic drafts as well, they don't really care about top lane that much. They know that Wunder will be the rock for them, so they look for as many advantages on the bot side as they can.
I feel like you just get a bit of duct tape and just put it over the top side of the map, and it wouldn't actually change this graphic that much.
But I guess the question is then, Alex, are you confident in Fnatic that if they have to shake it up, right, and if it's all about top side this series, that they could?
Well, in a best of 5, you need to be able to adapt, and you're adapting around some awesome players on this roster. You've got Wunder on the top side, and of course, for a long time, he was known as, you know, Europe's maybe greatest player back in 2019 when he was playing the Ryze top lane, the Pyke top. He's still there, by the way. You can still play around him. So if it is called for, I'm sure they'll have the ability to do so.
Yeah, we don't talk about it that often, but it doesn't mean that he can't pop off. Let's take a look at a similar map in terms of Caps' kills pre-14 minutes rather on the map, and it's kind of what you said already, Treats. He is that stable factor, and they do index a lot on top side, but it isn't necessarily the end-all be-all.
Yeah, I think Caps and G2 look at the map a bit differently than Fnatic. I think that Caps likes to get Broken Blade ahead, but when Broken Blade is ahead, I know him as a player as well, he's like, it's fine guys, I'm ahead, I'll win my 1v1 matchup, and Caps, you and Jankos can go bot and do something there as well, right? So I think they just try to balance the map a bit more than Fnatic, and it shows on the kill map.
And I think it does also show that they have a lot of love and a lot of attention towards Broken Blade, right? And Broken Blade was one of that pickups, I think, that made this into a team where we weren't really sure what to expect, but he has absolutely popped off this season.
He has, and G2 were one of these few rosters which really recognized that top lane could absolutely be a driving force. Now, we saw a little bit of that yesterday as well. We saw the Rumble and the Jace coming out of Orianna, two great success, but it's been G2 that have characterized that style all the way through the split so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think Broken Blade is not someone you want to see ahead on the enemy team. He's always really scary, and it's kind of weird because he plays these champs that no one else play, and when you see him ahead on Yone, you're like, I don't even know what Yone top does, but he just makes it work.
Damage, apparently.
Yeah, damage apparently crazy. And you as a support as well, Treats. What we've seen also from G2 is that Targamas, he just likes to go and roam, and he doesn't spend that much time together with FLICKR in the bot lane. That also helps.
Yeah, he's like, FLICKR, see you, I'm going top lane, and then they just make stuff happen on top. So I think that it's kind of G2's identity, right? And
Talk to me when you've got 2 items.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, FLICKR come online late game with Jinx. But I think, yeah, it's just what they're confident with and what they pick for, so it makes a lot of sense.
Let's put a couple of the picks on screen then for top lane. And I know that oftentimes in metas, people get really bored with top lane metas, right? But Broken Blade is like, I don't give an F. I'm going to play Akshan, Yone, Akali, Jace, Tryndamere, let's go.
Yeah, and these are the kind of champions where if you do get resources, they're really good at taking that small lead and expanding it massively. That does happen the other way. If you don't manage to achieve that, they snowball in both directions. But G2 have managed to kind of balance all of these factors and really use that to pile drive home an advantage in the area of the map, which most teams, as we said, aren't playing towards.
And we're going to take a closer look at the map pools and the possible comps that could come out later. But Treats, this already is a sign of what's to come, right? G2, they have the ability to flex a lot when it comes to individual champion pools.
Yeah, they 100% can. I think both Fnatic and G2, it seems like they have endless champion pools, right? It's really hard to predict what they will pick. But I think at least for the game 1, it's predictable that they will keep the style that they had in the regular season.
There's one thing that I think I can predict when it comes to Fnatic, and that's in the bot lane for Hylissang, and it is his Pyke. We've seen it a couple of times, of course, already throughout the season, and I do believe that Goldborg is standing by to give us a closer look at that terrifying champion that Hylissang likes to play.
Thank you very much, Shox. Yes, I've been waiting for ages to finally start breaking down Hylissang's Pyke because... Okay, so I want to get 3 things out of that segment that you guys can walk away with. 1, Hylissang is super good at making the most out of the pressure with this champion. 2, he's actually really good at applying this pressure elsewhere than bot lane as well. And 3, in turn, his team is really good at taking that pressure that he facilitated and taking it back down to bot lane. So let's start with a simple play. Let's start with number 1. Him getting the pressure in the bot lane. This is a game against Vitality, where Hilly is like, well, we have a slow push coming in, we have Kazi stepping up to see us some minions. He's not allowed to do this. Let's just trade the flash for flash. Reason why this is good is because it allows yourself to get back into position where you can punish Kazi without no flash. Let's take it into number 2. Now you have pressure in bot lane. Let's move it elsewhere on the map. Let's move it into the mid lane. And let's take the mid lane matchup into context. You have Twisted Fate versus Orianna. Orianna usually gets shoved in this lane, and it's only when you hit level 6 that Twisted Fate starts roaming. But with this pressure that Hylissang has gained on the Pyke, he's able to leave Upset alone. He's able to roam around mid lane. He doesn't necessarily need to kill Perkz here. What he needs to do is just apply pressure. Allow Humanoid to stack up a wave instead. As you can already see, more minions for Humanoid, easier to push in the mid lane. And what he's then gonna do is that he's gonna move back down on bot lane with Razork to facilitate a slow push once again coming in from Upset. Let's have a look at the minimap so you will see what's been happening in the meantime. Mid lane was pushed in. This allowed Humanoid to move bot. This allows them to now set up a tower dive position. Remember step 1? They forced Kha'Zix's flash. This makes this tower dive incredibly easy. It forces the opponent's team to almost always have their jungler down towards the bot side. And if they don't, well then this is gonna happen with the bot side as well, where they're just able to apply pressure. And that's why there's a little misconception. It's not always just the fact that bot lane is played around from Fnatic. It's the fact when Fnatic gets a lead, they're super good at moving it to the rest of the map, and then in turn the map is like, well, thank you, let me appreciate that and pay the pressure down back in bot lane. So thank you very much. And they've been continuously doing this. I've been loving watching the Fnatic bot lane with Hylissang on Pyke specifically. And I mean, we're probably much going to be hearing a lot about that guy.
Oh, we will. But I do like the fact that you pointed out, yes, Hilly's an absolute menace on that Pyke. It's his favorite pocket pick right now. But it's not just about that. It's also the way Fnatic is able to take the advantage wherever it was created on the map and spread it out across the map trees. Is that also the impression you get when you play against them?
Yeah, definitely. It feels like even though bot lane is the main carry for Fnatic, the even pressure, as you say, like, it becomes a lot to play against when you're like, oh, Upset can carry, Humanoid can carry, well, Wunder can also carry if he gets the resources, right? So it's really scary to play against them because it's not only Upset, right?
Mm-hmm. And then talk maybe a little bit more about Upset and Hilly and that bot lane. I know we saw it floating around. Are they the best bot lane in EU right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say right now they're always scary to play against.
What makes them so oppressive?
I think just in general, their champion pool and the way they play. I mean, yeah, we're dying on bot lane here
oh
as well.
No, this was not on purpose.
No, but this happens all the time, and this is why I love Fnatic doing this. Like, we could have taken this Telestrator, and I could have taken at least 3 games where they've been doing the same thing. Reason why I love Fnatic is because it's not only just about moving down bot lane, as we just talked about. It's the fact that they're so good with their rotations as well, the shifting on the map. It's really a beauty to watch.
Mm-hmm. And you gotta wonder, right, how much of it comes from the remaining members on the squad and like a Hilly and an Upset, because this is what Fnatic have always done, no matter what the iteration is. You get mid-prio, you call your jungler, you go bot, and you get a kill or 2. And it's just a formula that works. And I guess my question is, all the enemy teams know that, right? But due to maybe the width of what they can show and how good they play it, is it worth trying to play against it? Or should you just try and neutralize it as far as you can?
I mean, Cap said it himself, right? He's like, we could go top and just play our game. We can also match it. So I think they have 2 options prepared. I would say that the more common option would just be to go top and just let Fnatic play their bot style and try to minimize the losses that you have. But I think it's kind of up in the air, and I think that Fnatic also will have the ability to show that you don't have to go bot, right? You can go bot, mid, top. You can shake it up a bit.
And what we haven't talked about yet then is, what about the enemy bot lane? Why aren't we even mentioning FLICKR and Tartamas?
I mean, it's because usually we don't see them play towards that bot side as well. We heard Caps talk in the SOT as well that it is more about, well, we play 20 games a week. This is just one best of one. We'll play towards comfort, but we can play bot side if we want to. I mean, I'm looking forward to it if they are going to do it, because on paper as well, I'm on the impression that they will play up towards that top side. But this is a best of 5, and that's why it's so exciting, because we will see different dimension of these teams.
And we will see some untapped potential maybe on both of these teams. And another person with experience on both sides of the coin is G2's coach Dylan Falco, who actually won 2 LEC titles with Fnatic back in 2018. He's standing by with Lore.
Thank you, Shox, and Dylan, thank you so much for joining me ahead of today's series. This is interesting, actually. Shox was mentioning your history with Fnatic, especially in 2018. So how personal and special is the matchup for you today?
I think this matchup is always a bit special for me.
Yeah.
My old team, obviously Fnatic, it was a while back, but also me and Caps together on the same team yet again for this year, where we were both together on Fnatic. So I think I had a pretty good success in Fnatic versus G2 matchup from the other side, so I'm excited to play this from the G2 side.
Yeah, and it's always an exciting matchup, G2 Fnatic. Over history, I think it's been one of the most hyped matchup ever in the LEC. And we can say that maybe it takes turn in domination. We had G2 periods, Fnatic periods now. Who would you say it's favoring right now? Because asking Comp yesterday, he told me he was expecting Fnatic to take this one. What's your take on that?
I think we're actually coming into the set very confident.
Yeah.
I think although our regular season was really good, I also think we didn't show everything we have to offer. I think we didn't show all the play styles. I think we didn't show the level of play that I think behind the scenes we felt that we had. And I think with a best of 5 format, it really lets us be relaxed and realize that over 5 games, if we are better, we will win, you know. And some of the ways we lost in best of ones can't happen, I feel like, in a 5-game series.
How do you think it's going to show in best of 5, as you said? Because players mention often that you were looking to refine some game aspects. What have you been working on so far?
I think we've been working on a few things. One thing we've been working on is playing from behind. We want it to be very, very difficult to take a game off of in a best of 5 series. Like, even if we lose a game, we want it to be like the enemy to really, really feel how difficult it is. I think that's one thing. And we've been working on a lot of draft stuff, but some of it crazier than others, so unfortunately I can't talk about that.
I was about to ask, and I know you can't say too much, but with 12.5b, we know that there's been a lot of change in the meta, and it has been established that G2 this year has a champion Ocean, actually averaging one of the most unique picks every game. Don't say too much, but can we expect some crazy stuff from your side?
At least playoffs is a part of the year where I think you really need to play stuff that is proven to win. So I think like the really, really crazy stuff is less likely to be pulled out in a playoff format. That being said, what is less crazy for my team might be considered crazy for a lot of other teams.
All right, well, looking forward to seeing this. Maybe a couple words on the players. How do they feel backstage right now?
I think the players are just, they're so happy. They're having so much fun today. They had a crazy like music car, like where they're just jamming out, coming to the studio, and they're really just hyped for the match.
Fantastic. Well, great day ahead. Dylan, thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you.
Good luck against Fnatic today. And Shox, back to you.
Thank you so much. Lovely to hear from Dylan, who is obviously an expert voice in this matchup specifically. And he said what you already were talking about, Goldberg, being, yes, we can do different things, but we don't necessarily always have to show it when it comes to best of ones. And what we determine as a little bit crazy or not too crazy, others might determine as really, really crazy. And I think when you look at this draft discussion between these two teams, is the fact that G2 can be very unpredictable, right? Treats, they have picked so many different champions. I think when you look especially to Targamas, when you look especially to Broken Blade, it's just been a joy to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they have almost pulled out a new pick every single game, right? So it's really hard to predict what they will play in the playoff series. But as Dylan said, I think they might go, at least in the start of the series, for more true and tried picks that have actually worked for them. So I think that should be expected for game 1. But yeah, I mean, it's like predictable champs for G2. Does that even exist?
That's why I really don't think it does. I think you can have a stylistic that exists, but when it comes to target banning any of these players, that's where it becomes really difficult. And you know, we're having a hard time as analysts just coming in there. I mean, that Red Bull really puts you in the spot.
Wow, Broken Blade, get that sponsor money. Let's go.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like it's difficult for us to prep for a draft. It's even more difficult for a team. So it's like the first game is going to be the foundation of what we're going to be seeing today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, of course, have a little bit of tape to look at, not the scrims, but we've heard a couple of things about scrims not being that useful for anyone. But they did play 2 best of ones this season. One went to the side of Fnatic, one went to the side of G2 Esports. And in the last one in week 6, it was Fnatic that came up clutch or came up with the victory. And I feel like I'm looking at a bread and butter comp for Fnatic in this spring season.
You know how I was talking about I couldn't pick any game with a pike? They did the exact same thing here as well, where it's literally just like Hylissang landing 3 hooks, laning phase against Targamas and Leona. Granted, then I feel like that lane could have been played differently, and I think that comes into the discussion as well today in these best of 1 scenarios. How much was these like a few mistakes coming out from a matchup that could have played differently, and how will you adapt on the fly now that you have the opportunity to do so?
Tell me, with this composition then for Fnatic, what are the mechanics? What makes it work, and why does it work in their favor?
Well, I feel like just that they have attack on every front here. And you know you have a roaming mid lane as well. Everyone can go in on this roster, which at times makes it very difficult to play. But it feels like Fnatic is one of these teams that can play these compositions.
Yeah, it feels like Fnatic picked the hardest comp for them to play and just pull it off. Like, they have 5 champions with really high agency, really high mobility, and they like to fight, right? So all of their champs in this specific draft make a lot of sense. And I think that when they pick these champs, it just works out. Like it's not really one thing. It's like everything that they do together just works out really well. And if they pick up these early kills, it just snowballs hard.
Yeah, but it's not like I think G2 doesn't have their own responses or answers, because I feel like you have a composition that can attack with the roaming aspect as well. A lot of it just came down on the execution, and G2 at times were more inconsistent during the regular season, as Caps was mentioning himself, wasn't proud of the performance. This time around, they've really ramped up to form again nearing playoffs.
And I can hear the G2 fans' voices at home. Why don't you show the comp when they beat Fnatic in week 3? Well, I got you covered. We're not going to show it, but that's when they ran the Aatrox in Victor Jinx Zillion composition. And I think that's maybe more of the flavor that we will have to expect in this best of 5. Not necessarily these picks, but the fact that they can go a little bit out of the box.
Yeah, I think counter pick for Broken Blade, a stable bot lane as well for Targamas and FLICKR, I think is really important. And when they have these two things in their draft, I think they're also really confident. So it's really fun to see two teams that are really confident in their style play against each other when it's the opposite style. So I think that will make this matchup even more exciting.
We haven't even talked about this guy yet, Jankos. So Razork on the other side.
I mean, he's just too good now.
Honestly.
We have a whole best of 5, so that's why we leave something for the rest. Well, it's time to get into the predictions. Yesterday, people did pretty well. Nymera didn't, but I like that he put it out there. But GV, Treats, and Discord all got it spot on. Let's see who is first. Nymera gave me his prediction earlier, and it was not as out there as it was yesterday, but still a 3-2, but in favor of Fnatic. GB?
Well, I'm going back to what worked for me yesterday. I'm back to the 3-1 for Fnatic as well.
You have some time to explain.
Well, okay, so I feel like just in general that Fnatic, in terms of what they've shown on stage, has looked the cleanest. I feel like they've brought the highest League of Legends that we've seen, not only just in terms of rotation, but also in terms of the early skirmishes they're taking. Now, I feel like G2 are very good at their early skirmishes as well, but from what we've seen in terms of consistency and me looking over the games, it just feels like Fnatic has been the step ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I think that Fnatic just, especially when they get the wins, they snowball them really hard, whereas G2 can take a small win and not really want to snowball it super hard. So it's also a 3-2 for Fnatic for me as well. I think that they will take the series. I think it will be closer than what you said, but I do agree that Fnatic should be the favored ones.
Yeah, but you do think, okay, it's not just going to be a walk in the park for either side, and G2 might actually come pretty close if it is a 3-2.
Yep.
Discord, I think, voted for Fnatic. Let's see if it was 3-0 or... Oh, it was 3-1. So the fans were out in full force, but it was only a 3-1 for that. But hey, we're almost a minute away from Champion Select, and it's just, people might be wondering, oh, this sounds like you're talking about a final. We aren't, but this is the earliest in a playoff bracket that G2 and Fnatic have ever met. We might not see it again in the playoffs, although our inkling is that we might see him again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially being on the upper side of the bracket, it's nice for both teams to have this lifeline, right? They're not out if they lose, and I think having a bit of extra confidence in that sense as well means that even if they lose to this team right now, they can get a rematch later in the playoffs as well. So it's a really fun dynamic to see these two teams without that much pressure.
And GB, I know that before we started the show, you were looking over some of the historic matchups they've had and some of the finals in the arenas to get yourself going.
Honestly, today the nostalgia has been huge. I was just rewatching 2018 because I was there in the arena as a fan watching that game. And then watching Trevor starting out the day with that entire monologue of Fnatic and G2.
Perfect.
I mean, it sounds kind of cringe, but I was almost brought to tears just remembering back at moments like this.
It's not cringe, especially not thinking about the situation where, you know, sadly we still don't have fans back, right? But at least they get to play on stage. I just heard we have a slight issue at the caster desk, meaning we get to talk a little bit more, and maybe that does give us a chance to talk about the jungle, which we haven't mentioned, in Jankos and Razork, who are both, I feel like, silent yet important forces for their team, as junglers always are. What have you thought about their respective performances?
I actually think Jankos has been way more consistent than Razork has been in a team that has so many consistent laners, and it's not to talk bad about Razork, but I have a feeling where sometimes he could have played more on the safer side of what's actually happening. A few devs a little too often that probably should not have happened, but he's definitely not a bad jungler at all. I actually just think that Jankos had a little bit of an edge on him. I think Jankos has been very efficient with his pathing, and I think he's been very aggressive as well, just going up against counter jungling all the time. We saw it against Vitality as well, where he just kept chasing Selfmade. It's been a joy to watch.
It's been a joy to watch. Let's hope that this best of 5 is also a joy to watch. The time has come to write a new page in the book of Fnatic versus G2 Esports. So without further ado, let's send it over to the casters for picks and bans.
Let's go.